Okay, let's get going on the War of the Invisibles, Chapter 6, and we are continuing here in Wartburg Castle, AD 1522. Max! Frank! The boys rush over and hug each other in the kitchen of the great castle. It's so good to see you again, Frank. You too, Frank said. What's been happening here? Well, Max answered, Professor Luther has been really depressed. He hasn't been happy about being kidnapped and being in hiding, even if it was by his friends. That's what I hear, Frank said, but at least he was safe. Yes, Max nodded. He grew a beard, and he looks like a wild man now. He looks quite different. This I've got to see, Frank observed. I'm afraid not, Max said. He's shaving it off this morning. He is? Yes, in honor of going back to Wittenberg. Yeah, I heard that, Frank said. That's why I'm back here. I've come to make the trip with you too, and my uncle. Are you sure this is a good idea? At least he was safe here in the castle. If he goes back to Wittenberg, everybody's going to know where he is. His enemies could kill him if they want to. I know, said Max, nodding. But he's so unhappy here. I suppose, Frank mused, just sitting around in a dingy old castle would make me depressed too. He hasn't been just sitting around, Max said. He's been working on translating the Bible into German. He's partway through the New Testament. Into German? Frank asked. You mean so that people like us can just read it without having to learn Latin? Frank, Max scolded. You've been in school how long now? You should be able to read it in Latin, but yes. So that normal people could read it in German. Frank laughed. I'm no good at Latin, he said. They've kept me in school here only because my uncle's rich. Max laughed. Well, then maybe Professor Luther was translating it for you too. Anyways, he has stayed busy working on that. But he says that Satan has been harassing him and that the demons bother him so he can't sleep. One day he became so angry, he turned around and threw his ink pot at the wall. It smashed and made a great big splotch. He said he threw it at the devil, and he wouldn't let the maids wash it off the wall. He said it needed to stay there to remind the devil that what was coming to him if he kept bothering him. Frank chuckled. Sounds like Professor Luther to me, Max nodded. He loves God and he works very hard, but he has quite the temper, doesn't he? Frank laughed. It's a good thing that God uses people with character problems to do his work, or none of us would be able to do anything. Max nodded. That's right. There aren't any perfect people around for God to use these days. Frank laughed. Was there ever? So what's been happening on the outside? Max asked. I spend most of my time with Professor Luther, doing chores and running up and down the stairs, bringing things from the kitchen, and I don't hear much news from out there. Do people remember Professor Luther? Oh, yes, Frank replied. There has been much fighting between Professor Luther's followers and those who still follow the church leaders. Lots of people have died. That's terrible. Oh, it's worse than that, Frank continued. Professor Luther has been misrepresented. Many of his followers were sensible people, but all of the nuts who were unhappy with the church leadership before have jumped in on his bandwagon and claim to be followers of Luther. But they're just as crazy as they were before. And they give him really a bad reputation. What do you mean, Max? Well, there's this guy named Jan Bockelson. That strange man from Munster? He claims to be a follower of Luther. However, he says that he is the reincarnation of King David, and that the second coming will be soon. He has taken many wives as possible to make lots of children before Jesus comes again. More than one wife? Max asked incredulously. Yes, Frank said. He had 15 before the government came to and sieged the town. Eventually, they starved the people into submission. They opened it up and turned Bockelson over to them. What happened to him? Max asked. Oh, they killed him, Frank explained. There's been a lot of that out there. Mr. Bockelson isn't the only weird person who gives Professor Luther a bad reputation. Max was thoughtful. That's one reason Professor Luther wants to come back out and lead his people. It seems that there is so much fighting and so much confusion that they do need leadership. Yes, Frank said. And I suppose that if God wants him to lead the people, he is able to protect him too. Max nodded. And us, since we hang around with him. Frank's eyes shone. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Me neither, Max answered. Let's go upstairs and see if he's ready to go. The Most High did protect Professor Luther as well as Max and Frank and many of his other followers, although some of the others did pay for their commitment with their blood. 3 years after Professor Luther returned to Wittenberg, he married, being no longer a priest of the Catholic Church. By this time, both Max and Frank had completed their studies at Wittenberg and returned to their homes. Frank to his wealthy relatives, Max to his family. Both of them continued to share what they had learned and to spread the beginnings of the Reformation through Germany. As I watched them and recorded the events of the heavenly archives, two things stood out in my mind. As long as there have been organized religion, there have always been people who tried to use it to control others. Why humans have this need for control has never been clear to me. Perhaps it's just part of the sinful condition that humans suffer from. Control has never been a part of the Most High plans. He even was willing to give his son to die to restore freedom of choice to humans. The very ones who spread the good news of salvation were often the ones who turned around and tried to control others through religion. The Most High desires humans to worship him and love him with all their hearts. It has always seemed to me that humans would be better off concentrating on that instead. The other thing that seems to occur again and again is that humans seem very uncomfortable with just accepting God's gift. Trying to earn it themselves somehow is at the base of every false religion I have observed and recorded. For the archives from the earliest times, even among the followers of Christ, who were given the free gift of salvation, there seems to be a need to somehow earn it by their behavior. Do humans not just understand that this is impossible? If they could see what I see, they would just throw themselves at the feet of the Most High and say, "Oh, thank you, thank you." I guess humans can't see what I see. And those of us who work as guardians and recorders have to be patient. Perhaps someday we will understand the soft spot the Most High has for these frail creatures. For now we do our jobs as we've been instructed, caring for them, protecting them, and continuing to watch. Thank you for reading along, and the next chapter will be Chapter 7, the English Channel, AD 1559 through 1579, Geoffrey.